time to get into the first topic of discussion for the coffee today. Coffee talk. Coffee with Kensu. Keeping it going. Alright. Peep game. It's topic time. Yes, sir. We here. So, let's get it cracking. Alright? Got your coffee cups. Ready? So check it out. It is something that caught my attention. And I ain't gonna lie. We gotta talk about this. We got to talk about this. So what we have here, I'm gonna switch over, is a quote tweet from Keits. Those that don't know who Keits is, Keits was one of the lead designers for Killer Instinct, the most recent one. Killer Instinct 2016, 2013, whatever. New Killer Instinct. And he has some words to say from what Broski had here from a tweet. And we're gonna switch over, we're gonna take a look at what was said in the first place. Alright, boom. So we got the tweet right here. Biggest day, y'all can see everything. Pow. Alright, we're in your face. Pow, punch. Alright. So Broski states, I've been saying this for years now, but in the wake of several truly awful balance patches for multiple fighting games, it is crazy to me that more devs don't hire players as consultants, something which is commonplace in basically every other esport. Now, quite frankly, that's not untrue. A lot of the developers on games like Valorant and like League of Legends do have players that were considered pro or high level players at some point in their career. However, a lot of them had quit being players to go work for the company. Right, and that's the same for like Valorant in particular, because I know for a fact there were some CSGO players that were moved on and brought onto staff and shit like that before they released Valorant. So I know that's where they got a lot of their consultation from, and they just hired them on full time. Right now, I'm going to be that guy and say I don't know, and I'm not gonna. This isn't me coming at Broski sideways. I just don't know what his idea of an awful balance patch for multiple fighting games. If by this is like, oh, the patch with Terry was trash, or Street Fighter Season 2 was not very good, or Strive not very good, okay, I guess, right? But I'm a firm believer of I'd rather have the developer stand 10 toes down on their design philosophy than to buckle to the player base, which is exactly what's been happening with Tekken to whatever capacity, and it's not really been sitting well with me personally. Now, doesn't mean Tekken's a bad game, just that part of it is kind of, it's questionable, right? So Keits has a nice long-winded response here for this, and I'm gonna go into what he says, and then I'm gonna give my personal thoughts at the end of all this. So sit tight, let's get into it. So Keits goes, player consultants almost never help. Very few of them can put aside self-interest enough to give effective feedback, and often their asks are extremely self-serving. It can work, I've used them, but requires the right player choices and a confident, strong, balanced director. Reasonably so. And we got more. Balance, like other design aspects, requires vision. Many teams try to use statistics and math to guide balance, and this is also a mistake. Balance isn't factual, it's emotional. Without a leader that understands the game, the players, the psychology of it all, it's blind darts. Okay, reasonable. Good balance has a lot more in common with musical composition than it does AP statistics. It requires harmonious choices, purposeful imbalance of volume and frequency and tempo to achieve the desired emotional effect. What works in one song won't necessarily work in another. This is true. I don't believe most players see competitive balance this way, and I'm sure most game devs responsible for game balance don't see it this way. And I feel this is why we see so many big misses in the game balance space. Manipulate emotions, not numbers. Lead, do not follow. By the way, I met and spoke with hundreds of competitive KI players. Of them, I'd trust exactly 2 to give me good, big picture feedback, and only about 10 more to give me more narrow but useful, rational feedback about balance. Not a knock on anyone, just something not everyone can do. Now, I'm not going to go into the thread any further. This is basically what he had to say, and I mostly agree, and I'll tell you why. In the past, this isn't just Killer Instinct where players have done this. NRS is very notorious for this. I'm not gonna call out the players by name, but if it's one of those, if you know, you know. But there were players who got into NRS during Mortal Kombat X, learned the ins and outs kind of early on, and quit because they wanted to get in, be a game developer, learn about the characters, learn the cheap stuff, right? Put stuff in the game to be cheap, apparently. Allegedly, mind you. This is pretty well known, by the way. You can look it up yourself. I'm not gonna go put it in the description. You can go do some Google research. But some of those players did exactly what I'm talking about. They got on the dev team, they learned what they wanted to learn, made characters the way they wanted to make them, allegedly once again, and then got what they wanted, and then said, all right, we quit because we want to still be competitive. Now, the funny thing enough is there's a lot of people that were like, ban the testers. That was like a big thing back then, like ban the testers for like Injustice and MKX and stuff like that. Ban them because they, you know, the testers are the ones in the tournaments making the top 8, which is the irony, right? So I'm with Keits in the sense that there's a lot of self-servicing in this regard because these players want to have the leg up. You know what I mean? Not very many players can be very like objective. Am I gonna big up myself and say I can be objective? Absolutely, I can. Because there are certain things that, like, while I understand some people would look at it from a standpoint of like, it's very difficult to trust said players with certain games or certain scenarios, right? It isn't always just about, well, what one character can do versus another. It's about also striking the balance of the fun factor for the character that's being played by said player base. Whatever is top tier, obviously you're gonna want to try to touch base with, right? But keeping a character top tier isn't really a bad thing as long as there's counterplay that exists. But I think the counterplay doesn't always come from the players. Sometimes the developers have to kind of give hints, right? So take, for example, Honda in Street Fighter 6. He's very big on getting parried, right? So the Honda players have to play a game without getting perfect parried, right? Headbutts, I ain't gonna say easily perfect parry, but you can perfect parry it for the most part, a good chunk of the time. Same with butt slam. A lot of his moves are like, they die to that, but you can't rely on like drive impact to beat those moves. You have to parry them. So in turn, while you can parry them and do damage, he's not gonna die from it. Not to mention Honda has pretty good HP, so he's definitely not gonna die, right? It's gonna hurt. He might get corner carried, but he won't die. So you play around those mechanics, and then he's in essence, it turns into a matchup from a balance perspective where his moves are balanced around perfect parry. So the damage output he's gonna receive is gonna be on a lower end, providing the match is just nothing but perfect parries, right? If the match is not perfect parries and he's playing and he's able to start winning, when he starts hitting the opponent, he's doing more damage than a perfect parry combo. So that's where a lot of things come into play. And there's other aspects of it, right? The other dynamic could be, okay, well, I perfect parried him, I gotta find a way to use drive gauge, like using drive impact to like take away drive points away from him, so he'll be in burnout. So now you can play the game and not have to deal with those aspects of his game, right? Because he lacks OD meter, and Honda in burnout's pretty bad, right? A lot of characters are not great in burnout, you know, on the defensive side, and Honda's probably one of the worst ones. Again, not saying Honda's the worst character in the game, just if he's on the back foot in burnout, much like any other character, it could be bad news. So you play for these kinds of strategies. You see what I'm saying? So with that being said, they tend to balance the games like that, as opposed to, okay, we're gonna get a lot of getting a lot of player feedback doesn't have to require, you know, the player to playtest the game. You know, they can get player feedback by just watching streams. And I do think I'm a big proponent of empirical data, because I do feel empirical data does tell a lot of the story. Empirical data being numbers, which Keits says don't get it by numbers completely, right? So I'm of the opinion the empirical data serves its purpose. It doesn't tell the full story, but it serves its purpose. So because CFN's a pretty big thing, you can go always check CFN matches from said players, see how they're tackling the situation, and what you can do as a developer to help those players tackle and problem solve. Because I think a lot of fighting games are still problem solving, and I think that's a skill that like gets overlooked in fighting games. Most people want like clear-cut answers, and the developers don't really just give you a clear-cut answer, you know. So I don't know. This tweet sounds targeted towards 2xKO. No, this is definitely more so targeted towards just a statement from Broski. I'm not sure where it's targeted by 2xKO at all, but you can say that for any fighting game, whether it's here in the US or in Japan. So yeah, I mostly agree with Keits though. I just don't think getting pro players input is gonna be the best state or the best case scenario, because a lot of times emotion comes into play, and like, I feel this is broken, this should go away. It's like, well, that only benefits you. What about the people that play those characters? See what I'm saying? They don't have this to rely on. What are you going to give them as a supplementary? You know, at that point, that would be the question I'd pose to like said player who has frustrations with said character or said situation. All right, well, you pose us nerf this, so what say you as a trade-off? You see what I'm saying? I think one of the better ways to go about balance is like you do trade-offs, and the trade-offs also impact a character and player's risk reward, right? You don't want things to be too heavily skewed in one way and too heavily skewed in another. You don't want to have a game filled with like a bunch of low committal options that lead to a lot of big situations. You want to strike a balance of like, okay, this comes with risk. This is the reward that you gain for that risk. But if you choose to not take these risks, then you have these as your rewards. But I think that's one of the things that are very difficult to combat in game design, because quite frankly, it's funny because everyone is a game designer now, right? Everyone can go jump on Twitter, say what they think is bad about the game design, and it's a lot of just parroting. I think that's why it makes it difficult for people to have that, it's difficult for the developers to get that kind of feedback and work with it. Even ArcSys has stated this in video form recently, that a lot of players are echo chambers, without using the exact term, echo chambers, but they're echoing exactly what the quote-unquote high-level players are saying, but that doesn't apply to their skill level. You see what I'm saying?
そんないろんなフィードバックがある中で、ArcSys Max の中で、どうやってその意見を取りまとめて、どんなアップデートをやっていくのかっていうのは、日々、開発の中でも毎日のように議論されているというような感じでございます。
しかし、最近は、インターネット、ストリーム、SNS、これらの発展によって実際にプレイする、そうですね、そんなにこのゲームをやっていないプレイヤーであったり、まだまだそんなに高いスキルセットではないプレイヤーたちも、プロゲーマーであったり名前の売れてるストリーマーのリアクションを見て同じような感想を持つという傾向が今の時代は見られていると思います。ですので昔と違って、その実際触ってもらった上での感想をもとに調整をするというよりは、そういったカテゴリーのプレイヤーがどういったところからのイメージをこう受け止めているのかっていう、そういうそのゲームからちょっと外に飛び出している、見方っていったものも一緒に分析して考慮しなきゃいけない時代になっていると思います。これは非常に難しい、昔に比べてとても難しくなっているなと感じています。
A lot of things are contingent towards your skill level. Unfortunately, in most competitive spheres, the high-level players, unfortunately, do have a big role in dictating what's strong and what's not. So it's a very I can't use case by case, but it's a very interesting state of affairs, rather, right? Where the high-level players, while they are meta-defining people's communities, whatever you want to call it, it doesn't always go well with whatever they come up with, because what they come up with that they think is really fun might just be broken for everything else, and then they get upset. You took this away from my characters, this wasn't even that bad, you know, there's counterplay. It's like, yeah, there's counterplay, but only so many characters have a good counterplay to it. I think when characters have too much, if the counterplay risk reward is too high, right? By that I mean the risk versus the reward is too high. And if it favors the character too much, by that I mean the character that has the option, then it doesn't make for a good time. It makes for the risk reward very skewed. And then, you know, it's a whole trickle down effect. It isn't just, oh, this character can't do this anymore, okay, now, you know, we can play. It's like, well, now they have other options. right? So let's say, for example, they take like a very strong situation away from a character, right? A very strong Ogi situation, but you're still able to maintain pressure. That's still a good reward as opposed to like being full on being able to get a mix up. Because positional advantage is just as punishing as a mix up. Positional advantage can get you positional advantage damage, right? But I want the mix up. Well, you can't always get the mix up. You know what I mean? Now you're more negative on the situation now on hit, so you need to do something else. I think that's kind of where we fall, because we lack that understanding. We just want what's best for our characters. That's why I agree with what Keits is saying. It's very difficult to not think in that fashion. Instead, like, what makes it very difficult, or what not difficult, but ways to consider balance is like literally, like I said, when you consider situations and matchups, a lot of times developers just like, especially in not recent times, but in the old days, to my knowledge, from doing a lot of research, is like a lot of times developers made characters and just let the players figure it out. Now the developers play a bigger role in what the characters can do and don't just let the players figure it out. You know, and that's one of the beauty parts to me about current fighting games. I couldn't dare hire like a top player to do said thing. I couldn't do it. Like if I was in charge of like, just say Street Fighter 6 for example, there's no way I'm picking up any one of the dudes who are in the higher ranks of the game in terms of like I don't know. There's just no way. I wouldn't pick them up and put them on dev staff to help give input. No way. Different outlook. I don't know. I think that their outlook would be very, 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 very different. Even if you like, and I think what's also not understood here in this situation is like what Keith said, and I've learned this myself, just to throw an extra monkey wrench in here. You know, I did help with Streets of Rage 4. I was a big tester for the game. I was probably one of the top testers actually. And yes, a lot of my feedback and my findings helped them make the game better. Yes, a lot of my findings and feedback were put into the game in the later updates. Yes, right? But not everyone had those same intentions to want to see the game go a certain way. You know, and then when there's an update, there's a lot of expectations from fans who want certain things. But the developers have a design document, which I've said countless times in streams and videos. You know, the developers have a design doc that they have to stick to. You know, if this is what their design doc says, they're going to stand 10 toes down to the best of their ability without having to take away from what their original design. Because if they take away from the original design philosophy, then what ends up happening is it hurts the way they balance the game down the road. Like if they have a set of balance that they are considering down the road to be these said variables, then they want to keep building the game to touch those variables and expand upon those variables. Versus, okay, we added it to the game with no real rhyme or reason. We just thought it would be cool. Then you run into more problems because, well, it's really cool, but it's also really silly. It could be really broken. It could be, there's so many different things that come into play. See what I'm saying? Let's see here. Street Fighter 6 balance is weird to me because their priority is a bit conflicting. They were trigger happy for Geef, but not Akuma, for example. They have data, we don't, obviously. It's just a little confusing. I can understand that. I think that's, and I'm glad you said that, right? Here's the other part of that, right? When the balance seems confusing, I think that's when we have to try to take an objective look and see what the ultimate goal was, right? And let's just be real, right? The ultimate goal of a fighting game is for players to feel included, players to feel like they can have fun with their characters. For better or worse, a character like Geef, who may seem a character like Geef that seems like overtuned or whatever, he's definitely gonna be one of the ones that they're gonna look at very heavily because they want people to play the character. It's not like Geef needs to be broken per se, right? And I say broken very loosely because I do not like the way the word broken and some of the other words are used. We'll just say Zangief being too good, right? If he's too good, then we want people to play him. You know, sometimes there are clear development signs where they want players to pick said character to have different results. Does that mean everyone needs to do it? No. Does that mean that the developers are right? Definitely not. But they have done these things in the past in other games. where they're like out with the old in with the new in terms of characters. It's not always the most fun time when playing, because obviously you can look at Geef and be like, "That is kind of crazy." You look at Akuma and you're like, "Well, he's kind of crazy too." But Akuma honestly has gotten a lot of nerfs prior to Terry's launch. Right. Twitch.ko has players working on the game, and that seems to be panning out well. So I think it always depends. Like, their battle designer now is Yohozi. Do people trust Yohozi? If Yohozi doesn't make a good impression, then that could be an issue. It's like this, right? Check it out. Let's be honest for a second. If the game development team had players in which you could trust, I think that softens the blow, right? Like, say for example, let's just say I was in the mix for 2XKO, just for the sake of saying, right? Let's say I was in the mix for 2XKO. Would you feel more confident in knowing that I'm a part of that dev team? Or would you be worried still? You see what I'm saying? Like, does that make sense? Like, I think it's also who's on the dev team that plays a big role, right? There's things that give people, like, I guess you could say, it could ease their mind, you know? Like, are you cool with this? Does that make sense? Like, it's like when you see Devil May Cry, yo, is Kamiya on that? No? Oh no. Okay, is this character on it? Or this character, excuse me. Is this player on it? Yeah, okay, cool. Was this person on it? Okay, cool. Like, take for example, you had Kamiya and Itsuno, right? If Itsuno was gonna if there was gonna be a DMC 6, right? We already know Itsuno's gone from Capcom, right? But let's say that he was still at Capcom. If he was still at Capcom and DMC 6 was announced and you found out he wasn't on it, you'd feel like, well, that doesn't make any sense. He was on DMC 5, you know? But if he is there, obviously, and he's on it, you're gonna be at ease. You're gonna be like, yes, hell yeah. Itsuno's on it, nothing to worry about. We got the framework from DMC 5, we got Itsuno here, we got the dev team from the original game here. You know, we're cooking with oil. But when you have people that you don't know on it, right? If you have a battle director or a battle planner or whatever, or a director you're not familiar with on the game, then it's like, well, I don't know, man. And so balancing his ability to address issues and be honest with us makes me more trusting. They have a lot more to work out. Yeah, I mean, I'd be the one to tell you that, like, 2XKO is in a position where it'll be one of the first American fighting games of that stature. And how far along they're gonna go in terms of transparency will depend on so many factors. But I think their transparency at the moment is pretty good. And I think that's gonna go a long way with people. You know? But I think when you have people, I'm just a firm believer, when you have developers that you trust, I think it becomes easier to want to, like, play the game. Right? In some cases, it can it could be the reverse. Right? But but I think it just depends on who's in charge, who's there. You know what I'm saying? So whoever's there is gonna make a big impact here. But I just feel like if we just swing the discussion back to if players were part of the balance portion, I definitely feel like the games would be really, really, back for a better term, they might get worse. Cause I'm gonna just be open and honest here. I'm not trying to attack, but I think it's about time I say it in a video. You know, for what it's worth, Arslan Ash has been definitely, you know, it's not impossible to see it. Arslan definitely has been in and out of his feels about Tekken 8, and, like, some things have been changed. I won't say just in favor of him, but they're changed in favor of maybe he's had some influence on the game's balance. And some people would say the same about Mortal Kombat with Sonic Fox, right? But, like, when I see that, a lot of things that were stated, you know, not just by him, but maybe some other players too, and it's all over Twitter, it's all over socials, it's like, I don't think Bandai Namco could ignore it, but I think that's where the other companies do a better job of ignoring it, right? Just because you're an Evo champion doesn't mean you know what makes the game good. You know what you basically, and let me put this in perspective, right? So you guys understand my point of view when I say this. Being an Evo champion does not qualify you to be a game developer. You're using what's necessary to win the game. And if every character is exactly like that top tier character that you're playing to win the game, then the game becomes homogenous, and that's what everyone complains about. Oh, the game's homogenous, the game's homogenous, oh, the game's homogenized. Well, you let the Evo champion have say in the development of the game. And now the game is in a position where no one likes it because they chose to listen to that guy. And at that point, what ends up happening is the heat that the developers would get would go on said player. How do I know? That happened to me with Streets of Rage. People were upset at me. Oh, Kensu ruined the game. He's on the dev team now. Them dudes didn't pay me a single damn dime. I did what I did out of love for that game and wanting to see it thrive. Okay? And I get all these people coming into my streams, in my YouTube comments. You guys watch this, you can go see it yourself. Go look at my Streets of Rage videos that are not the speedruns, and look at the stuff about Axel and Cherry in particular. And all these, oh man, you ruined the game, or they come in my stream, oh you ruined the game, you ruined the game. They trusted me to stream the updated versions of the game so that you can see it and give feedback and not just my own. What people don't understand is a lot of the feedback that I was given, I put that in my documents. I put that feedback in my documents. I did. Yes, I helped with Streets of Rage 4. Yeah, that's under my resume. Big title, mind you. big title. But I took that responsibility with stride. You see what I'm saying? And I had a lot of fun working on that. This isn't like, oh, this isn't a joke. I'm very serious. And a lot of people came into my streams attacking me, telling me this, that, and the other, and I'm like, I didn't make the game worse. This is your feedback. Based on your feedback, I'm giving it to them on top of my own. And they're in my streams watching it too. Now, they didn't quell the fire for me. They didn't come out and say, oh, well, Kensu's not on dev team. I do that myself. They were too busy making the game. I'm not mad at them for not coming out and saying I'm not on dev team. People assume that. People assumed I was on dev team. Like, no. I play the game a lot. I speedran the game. I found all these bugs and glitches. If I show you the stuff that I found in that game, it's pretty crazy. It's pretty crazy, the stuff that I found. Like, trust me, being a game tester, oh yeah, I could definitely do that. 100%. I can show you guys some really crazy bugs and glitches in that game. There's a lot. But that's what I'm saying. They trusted me to give them proper information. If I was literally to show you guys my documents on what I gave them from stage to stage, I played all of the characters every single stage. I tried to find bugs and glitches. I played 2 players, one on my keyboard, one on the pad to try to figure out, are there any bugs here? What if these 2 characters collide like this? What if I throw this character this way? Do you get stuck here? Like, these are the kinds of things that like they're looking for, and I get it. Okay, so you did all that free work? Yeah, because I mean, they didn't have to let me jump on in their freaking Discord and let me help them. They could have just told me no, but they gave me the ability to stream the latest patches of the game. You guys have no idea. I went through so many patches of that damn game, so many different boss upgrades, so many different things. Like, I've done a lot of stuff. I did a lot of stuff to help that game. Like, that game is basically a beat 'em up fighting game with all jump cancels, dash cancels. Go look at it. Look at what the game has. Training mode, colors, custom loadouts with other moves for the other characters. All things that I suggested. So it's like, what do you want me to tell you? That's the kind of level of trust a developer is looking for from a player. And if a player can't provide that for them, why are they going to listen to your feedback if you can't provide something that is of value for their product? Does that make sense? And I think that's not what's at everyone, because you got to think of it this way, right? If you're a high level player giving them feedback, then I think part of the thing is you probably don't need to be playing competitive. See what I'm saying? But if you give them changes and these changes lean towards your favor and you're playing the character that leaned in that favor, that looks bad on the developers who listen to you. then the people who play the game look at that person and their target like, hey, hold on, y'all did all this balance for them. This is a very nuanced discussion, man. I'm not gonna lie to you. I think what ends up happening here is if you're gonna listen to high level player feedback like that, I think the goal at that point is like, if you're gonna consult them, they can't play for a period of time or something. There has to be a stipulation. I know that sounds harsh, but the reality is if they're able to test that game or test these new changes and then be able to compete for the money right afterwards, that's not a good look. Especially when it's just a closed group of people. If it's a closed test, if it's a closed testing phase, those players can't play for a period of time. They just can't. It would be too cheap. It would be I'm not saying every player would win, but the knowledge that they would have from being able to sit there in that in that build of the game for that period of time would look so bad if devs let them play. It would look so bad. And like I said, that happened with MKX, but they just let them play because they're no longer dev team. You know what I mean? Yep. They did that with Injustice. Yep. That's what I'm saying. Like, I can't comment on all the players because I don't know the full story. I just know what I saw, and a lot of people. Ban the testers was definitely a hashtag. It was definitely something people were upset about. No one liked that those players who tested the game were in the tournaments. Nobody. Because they knew more than the other people who didn't test the game. But I think at that time it was a different time frame, right? Like, people didn't know any better. This was still a new thing in fighting games. So I can understand how that wasn't, well, not the best look. I also can understand why it happened, you know? So, yeah, the player that helped with Smash Ultimate couldn't compete, yeah. Yeah, it was just getting big enough to matter, yeah. Most player consultants aren't helpful, but honestly, I would like them to be more willing to let general public test their ideas, like experimental mode, like Overwatch. Yeah, if they had a PBE, that'd be kind of cool, and they had like feedback forms, like how Riot has like a public PBE, public beta test server or whatever. That'd be cool. But I think that's very difficult also, because then what ends up happening is people might snatch that build of the game, and then it's like, all right, cool, we got this build, and now we're gonna make a mod. So I feel like that's where things are difficult. That's where things are gonna get real difficult. Now, if they did something where it was like your CFN or something like that, then they could ban you on CFN, then that'd be cool. Then that makes it, that gives it more of a tangible thing. You see what I'm saying? Then it's more real. Where like, all right, if you screw up and you like leak data or information from off of this, boom. You know, but you'd have to sign. I feel like if they did something where it's like an NDA or something along those lines, where you're allowed to talk about certain things and things of that nature, sure. Because you can't slander what isn't complete. You know, but I think personally though, like personal opinion, I would rather keep our players, I'd rather keep our top players away from the development side. I'm gonna tell you right now, there's so many accounts of players helping and not really helping at all. They're helping themselves. This dates back to Marvel 2, CVS 2. CVS 2 is one of the more prime ones. You know, I'm gonna leave the player name out, but there are some people who knew about role cancel and never told Capcom, and literally ruined CVS 2. Role cancel being in the game, not the worst thing in the world, but it definitely didn't help either. You know what I mean? So the fact that they knew and didn't tell Capcom at that time was really bad. So that's why I'm like, I personally would rather keep our players out of it. I'd rather Capcom watch the tournament footage, use ranked data, and go from there. Watch streams, see how people are feeling about things, and go there. I do think feelings are important in this, but I think you can't disregard the numbers and the feelings. You gotta have them both. You know? Yeah, players working on the game is definitely a double-edged sword. That's why I feel like it'd have to be like a Twitch KO thing. Like, you'd have to be like retired, or just you don't play that game. Right? Like, you can't compete at that game. Like, if the developers had the ability to compete in the 2SKO tournament at EVO, that would be cheap. Whether they win or not, they know stuff that we don't, and it's gonna be kind of unfair. It's gonna be an unfair advantage. It's like Pigger's advantage. Who wants that? Nobody. You know what I mean? So that's kind of where I'm at. You know? Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Empirical data matters a lot, because you gotta remember, people's opinions change with their emotions, right? So like, I've seen lots of examples outside of fighting games where passionate high-level players get hired by the company for their advice, but then they stop being players, and I don't think most are passionate enough to give up competing. Bingo. That's it right there. I think in some cases, not listening to the overwhelming parts of the game, I think that, again, I feel a lot of times when they don't change something, I feel like they want players to figure it out. I feel like there's parts of the game they want players to figure out. How long is it going to take for the players to figure out? That remains to be seen. But like I said before, this is a very nuanced discussion, and we can talk about this for hours. You know, but I do appreciate everyone's feedback here in chat. It's beautiful. Love seeing everyone bring their feedback up. I'll just say for now, we'll leave it here. We'll call it adjourned. At least for this video. Right? We'll call it adjourned for this video, and we can always talk about it at a later date, another video. If you want to revisit this, y'all just let me know. But with that being said, let me get up out of here. Let me know in the comments how you guys feel about this topic. How do you guys feel about high-level players giving feedback to developers to maybe help the game or maybe help themselves out? Talk to me. Let me know how you're feeling. Let me know down below. I'll talk to you guys later, and I'll see you in the next video. You know what time it is. Deuces, gooses.